Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with a good old countdown video. This one's going to be my favorite tag teams. I limited it down to the top 5, which honestly made it very hard. I came up with the number 5 spot off the just the last minute. Just said boom. Honestly, if it came down to it and I flipped on the WWE Network, this is the team that I'd want to watch more than anybody else out there. But definitely Cade and Murdoch, the Hardys, Edge and Christian, the New Age Outlaws. There's a lot of honorable mentions that could have gone into this video, but I don't want it to be an hour and a half long talking about 10 tag teams. So top 5 of all time, honestly, starting out with number 5 would have to be the Orient Express, tag team managed by Master Fuji. Basically, these guys were the best tag team in the world by the fact that, they didn't really win that much. They never were the tag team champions. I don't even think they were ever even in a number 1 contenders match. But when I go watch, early pay-per-views from like 89, 90, 91, the Orient Express blow me away. A lot of the time they're in like the opening tag match of the night. They have a match, them against the Rockers from the Royal Rumble. The year escapes me. I think it's 1990, but it might be 1991. This match is one of the greatest tag team matches that I've ever seen. You think of when you're opening up a pay-per-view, you want to get the crowd, up off their feet. They've already paid their money. They're excited to be there. But, you get some high flying. You get some real fast action. Guys tagging in and out. Not really, doing the whole thing where you're waiting for the hot tag. The guys are going full steam all the way through. The tide's going back and forth, back and forth. Orient Express, right there, number 5. Honestly, if it came down to it, I know I have a best of compilation of them, but I think that every time I see them coming out for an old pay-per-view that I'm watching on the WWE Network, I get a little excited because I know the match is going to be really, really good. Number 4 on the list, the Dudley Boys. These guys have won almost every championship there is in the world. I'll always remember the first time I ever went to an ECW show. It was the house show. It was in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, it was in a suburb. It was in the Gwinnett Civic Center, and they didn't even wrestle as a tag team. I'd only known sort of a little bit about them. I've heard about them, but I'd never really seen them. They didn't wrestle as a tag team. They wrestled splits. Devon Dudley wrestled in the main event against Taz, and Bubba Ray Dudley wrestled against Little Spike Dudley, LSD, in a Falls Count Anywhere, sort of beat him up all over the arena kind of match. Really, really fun. But these guys, conquered. They conquered ECW. They got to the point of, basically once TNN signed their deal to go to. Oh, I apologize. I messed up my initials. When ECW signed their deal to go to TNN, I don't know if it was Vince McMahon raiding them so they wouldn't be a real big threat to them. I remember. I think they signed a deal to be on Friday nights. The time slot that they got wasn't even going to be that good. But, Vince at that time took the Dudleys and they took Taz, 2 of the biggest names that ECW had. So here they are getting their real big break and getting a cable television deal, which is really going to put them in a better light. And 3 of their biggest, best performers are taken away from them right off the bat. But these guys, they sort of cheated their way to winning the WCW championships, winning them once WCW closed down in WWE. But, a record is a record. They've won the tag team championships over in Japan. They won in TNA. When they went to TNA, it was a really, really big deal. WWE sort of gave up on these guys, decided there was nothing really left for them. And, they went on and they took over TNA. They gave them a big, name value right off the bat to put into that tag team division. I can remember when, there was the Dudleys, there was the New Age Outlaws, and wrestling under a different name. Shit, I just had all those names off the top of my head. They had a really fucking good tag team division in TNA in like 2005, 2006, around that time. It was way better than what WWE was putting out if you like tag team wrestling like I did. But the Dudleys coming in at number 4. Number 3, probably the most controversial name that's going to be on this list, is going to be the Road Warriors / Legion of Doom. Honestly, when it comes down to it, as I was a kid, I didn't know a lot about the NWA. I didn't know a lot about Hawk and Animal. I didn't really know a lot about the Road Warriors. I didn't really know about them until about 90, 91 when they came to WWF and they started wrestling as the Legion of Doom, and they were more cartoon characters. They were a little bit tuned down. I knew enough to know that they were a big name and they were coming in, but from watching WWF, I never really got to see what I thought. They never really lived up to that name value, because it wasn't until I was older and I started watching the older NWA things when I was, becoming really into the tape trading and getting more NWA pay-per-views and getting into those. I never really knew what they were, and even though I have memories now about what they were, I didn't get to see, them driving the spike into Dusty Rhodes' eye. I didn't get to see, those War Games matches back in the day. So they don't rank as high on my list, but Hawk and Animal, are one of the best tag teams. I don't think you're going to be able to argue that much against the rest of this list. Number 2 on this list is the Steiner Brothers. These guys are, really brothers, and like a lot of tag teams that were put together back in the day. Graduates from Michigan. They always wore the Letterman jackets from back in the day. When they wrestled in the WWF, they always had real cool attire with sort of like the neon colors, and it almost seemed like every time they came out, they never had the same attire on as well. Another match, which is possibly one of the best tag team matches I've ever seen, and I believe is on one of the Brett DVDs, and I can't honestly remember what it was. It's the Steiner Brothers against Brett and Owen. It's originally released on one of the older Coliseum home videotapes. It was exclusively shot for that, and they went out there, even though this was the house show that was going to be filmed for a Coliseum video release, really, tore the house down and really stepped up to the plate. Scott Steiner gets a bad rap because of what he really became in later WCW. They had him under contract. They wanted to make him a bigger star, but it was almost like Scott wanted to leave, but he couldn't get out of his contract. He did everything in the world to try and get fired, and the more, hot water that the guy got in, the more of a push they gave him. He ended up being the, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion a few times, and he held it until the last Nitro, where he dropped it to Booker T, and some people say that was mostly because WWF had no idea that they were ever going to use Scott Steiner, and by putting the championship on Booker T, there was a good chance that when WCW resurfaced, they would have the champion, who was the champion on that last Nitro. But if you subtract all of that Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, White Thunder stuff from those last days, the Steiner Brothers were one of the best tag teams in the world. Every time, Scott used to go out in the early 90s, it was almost like he was like the Cesaro of today. Like, he just, at his size, he shouldn't have been able to do the moves that he was doing. It was almost like every match he debuted a new move. The move as the Frankensteiner today, was actually a move that was made up by Scott Steiner, if you can believe that, so that's crazy. Number 1 on my list was my favorite tag team as I was a kid. Axe and Smash, Demolition. When I looked at these guys, I was scared of them. I really believed that they were, sort of like soldiers sent from hell. They would come out with all the spikes all over their things, and I know people are probably saying, hey, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, they wore bigger spikes, but I don't know, the cartoony spikes out of the shoulder pads that LOD wore never really intimidated me the way that Demolition did. Demolition at one point held the tag team championships in WWF. That was really like the number 1, tag team division. If you go back and think about, the Killer Bees, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation, nobody was able to beat this team. Demolition, they would go in, pay-per-view after pay-per-view, just beating everybody. And, sometimes they had Mr. Fuji with them. They did a babyface term, or babyface for a while, without Mr. Fuji. They had the short run where they actually tried to, prolong Demolition when one of them was getting a little bit older by adding Crush, who would later become Brian Adams of the NWO, or Kona Crush, if you're a big WWF fan. But I think that if they wouldn't have signed Legion of Doom, and they would have been able to keep Demolition going with Crush in there, I think they would have had another few years added onto their thing. But with LOD coming in, I think they did the short program, but it was like the 3 members of Demolition going up against Legion of Doom and the Ultimate Warrior, which was pretty cool. And then they just killed off Legion of Doom. Demolition is a team that I've always really wanted to meet, but I've never, wanted to pay for the picture, if this makes sense. I believe that these guys are legends. Like I said in this video, they are my favorite tag team. But when it comes down to it, Demolition's old, and they got the face paint on, and they just don't look like the same. They just look like the old clowns that are out at the fair or something like that. They just, it doesn't work for me, and it's just not the same. I would pay $100 easily to get a picture with Demolition in 1990 or 1991. You know, that is, you know, their era. I mean, they were the tag team, and they were always my favorite as a kid. So there's my top 5 tag teams. Let me know if you guys make a video. Tweet it out to me on Twitter, or just send me a video response, which they don't do, so I don't know why I keep asking for them. Peace out, everybody.